kore koutou e warewaretia, hakoa koutou ko haere ki tō o tā wau, ngā mate o te wā, hara mai haere. Tātou kei te ao maramati he wa mauri ora, and welcome back to the hui. In 1975, the cry of not one acre more echoed from Te Hāpua to Parliament, bringing together thousands from across the country to seek justice for the ongoing loss of Māori land. Half a century on, the questions raised by that march still resonate strongly. Mea nei te kōrero a John Boynton.
50 years ago, the first small steps were taken of a 1,000-kilometre hīkoi. People slept overnight at Aotearoa's northernmost marae at Te Hāpua. The following morning, the march was led off by a 79-year-old queer, Whina Cooper, and her group Te Rōpū Matakite o Aotearoa, protesting the alienation of Māori land. Whānau of all ages were on the journey. Some by car, some by foot, all heading to their final destination, Parliament Grounds, Wellington. They crossed the length of Te Ika a Māui. A carved Pou Whenua was carried at the front of the march. Symbolically, it would not touch the ground until land grievances were settled. The journey was physically and emotionally tough, requiring intense energy and focus over a month. As they passed through towns, kai tautoko turned out to encourage and help fund the hīkoi, while the media captured their growing momentum. The hīkoi approached the Auckland Harbour Bridge, then crossed over into the city. The numbers of marchers had grown to thousands, the biggest march that Aotearoa has ever witnessed. The Pou Whenua led the way as they moved south. The logistics were enormous. All these marchers needed somewhere to rest, sleep and eat. Marae and schools opened their doors. There were many familiar faces, including poet Hone Tuwhare, te reo Māori visionary Hannah Jackson, and activist Tame Itzi. Then finally, 1 month later, on the 13th of October 1975, they arrived en masse at Parliament. Whina Cooper presented a petition signed by 60,000 people to Prime Minister Bill Rowling, demanding a halt to the loss of Māori land. Not one more acre. The Pou Whenua, which never touched the ground during the hīkoi, is now a taonga housed at Waitangi. It still remains off the ground.
And our thanks to photographer Christian Heinig and Alexander Turnbull Library for those stunning images of the Land March. Following the march, the Waitangi Tribunal was established. And 5 decades later, there's been $2.7 billion of redress to iwi across Aotearoa. But yet, the kōrero remains. Now, joining us now to discuss the legacy and ongoing impact of that momentous event in Māoridom are two dedicated activists and hīkoi participants who were in that montage footage you just saw there. They are Rose Raharuhi Spicer and Deirdre Nehua. E oku whaia, tēnā kōrua.
Tēnā koe.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it.
Tēnā koe.
Whaia Rose, why did you join?
Why did I join? A lot of reasons. There's more than one. Growing up in my kāinga in Te Hāpua there with my queer, she brought up all us mokos, and hearing her stories, you know, land being taken, not knowing the changes, why the changes from hapu land to lands and survey, to dock, to private. You know, there was all that. There was kōrero about Aotearoa. There was kōrero about her brothers that went to war and came back damaged by it. There was kōrero about us losing Aotearoa, our identity, our culture. There were a lot of reasons for me to do that hīkoi. During that time, the Crown were wanting to take coastlines off our people, and then trying to pacify things by saying, oh, we'll swap it with some other land, which was ours anyway, but was swamp. You know, so it was all those things. And then one night, a motorbike comes up our drive, and in walks Cyril Chapman and Vivian Hutchinson.
Wow.
And said, hey, mate, we're going on a march. We're going to march to Wellington. Mo te aha? You know, why? Why are you doing that? And they said, well, all our land, 63 million acres we had in 1862, you know.
Gee, you mentioned Cyril, ka tangi te ngākau.
Ai, ka tangi te ngākau.
Whai Deirdre, why did you join the hīkoi, knowing there are risks, right? Knowing there would be impacts?
Well, like Rose, I listened to all the kōrero of our kaumata and koe, in particular my grandmother. And I come from Whangaruru, and I love that land deeply. It's directly connected to my heart. And at the time, Pat Hoskins was the chair of the Ngāti Wai Trust Board, and he was doing a lot of work to make sure that Ngāti Wai knew that our whole coastline was going to be stolen by the government. So I went and visited my grandmother and said, this is what's happening, and I want to march for Whangaruru, for Motukowhai, which was where our home was. And she said, you go for us, you do that for our whānau. And the risk for me was if we didn't go, not if we did. The risk of, well, whatever the risks were of going, didn't even enter my head. The risk was if we didn't go, we would lose our home. There would be nothing left for my children and my mokopuna and for future generations.
How important was it to have someone like Dame Whenakupa leading that kaupapa?
Well, I think obviously it had to have a leader, and I think she was the right person for the time. She had that charisma. She knew how to talk to people in government. She knew how to talk to our people, and she was already a natural leader. But behind that, there were many, many, many other people who were also involved in the leadership. You know, I think of Carmen Kirkwood, who was Whina Secretary at the time, Witi McMath, I said I wouldn't name people because there's so many people who were leading from behind, who were organising from behind. And as you said in the introduction, the logistics of it was massive. And the logistics of it started taking place long before the actual march took place.
It gained traction as it went throughout the motu, Rose. You were described as one of the hardcore marchers because you marched as a 19-year-old the whole way. When you think about that now, what comes out? What are you reminded of? What sticks
Sore
out?
feet.
Sore feet. Well, sandals will do that, you know.
Yeah, sore feet. Kumarahau. My grandmother saying to me, you know, you get those blisters on your feet, piss on them. You know? That'll fix that.
Mi o waiwai.
Mimi ki runga o waiwai, ka pai. Kumarahau, you know, drink it so you don't get māwiwi. Keep it so it's strong so you have it the next morning, an hour before you head off so you have your number twos, you know. Save the rest to miri all your aches and pains the next night. So kumarahau played a really big part in me doing that hīkoi.
Wow.
You know, sandals, going through the snow, you're putting on 2 pairs of socks, you know. And I only wore sandals because I couldn't afford anything else. You know, that's what I had. That's what I used. And as Deirdre said, you know, it happened. You listen to your queer, you listen to the stories. The time was there, led by a queer that was big part of the Māori Women's Welfare League. Everyone knew her. My auntie Mira was part of that. You know, so you had to do it.
Yeah.
You couldn't not do it.
Yeah.
You know, the cry was too loud.
There's a photo, Deirdre, which actually you sent to me as well, as you're going under the bridge in Wellington. You're wearing the yellow T-shirt. We saw it in the montage with the hands up. And it looked joyous. Was it?
Yeah, that day it was. That was the day we marched into Wellington. And there was this energy. There was this energy on that day.
Wow.
And just either before or after, no, before that photo was taken, they were building the motorway into Wellington then. And I still have this snapshot in my mind. Up on the hill, there were all these bulldozers looking down on us as we were marching, and all the drivers had stopped and were kind of leaning against their machinery and standing. And most of them were Māori, and we were like, what are you doing up there? Get down here, get down here, join the land march. And it seemed like hundreds, but a lot of them came, left their machinery, came down that hill and joined the march, and we had been cheering and clapping for them doing that. But it was an electric day.
Yeah.
When you think about where we're at a nation now, and there have been other hīkoi, but when you think about where we're at as a nation now, in the current political context, what do you make of that now, Whāros? E rongoa nui te tangi?
You know, what happened in 75, we were kids, you know. We went out there with a dream and a hope that everything was going to be okay, you know. I remember walking along, you know, the harbour bridge and hearing the tūpunas and feeling them. I remember walking down Queen Street and seeing the looks on people's eyes, people crying, look of what's going on, wanting to know more. You know, it was just, as Deirdre said, it was electric in Wellington, but seeing people starting to realise, hey, this is a peaceful hīkoi out there letting people know what's happening to our people, you know?
So very quickly, Deirdre, because I've got to go, but very quickly, when you think about now, where we are now, does it hurt? Are you mamai at the way in which our current political context sits in this nation 50 years on?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I never imagined as a young girl back then that 50 years later, our mokopuna would be having to do hīkoi and fight for exactly the same thing that we were, for the privilege and the right to just be Māori.
Yeah.
And I guess the sad thing about the way things are today is all of those Māori who are in Parliament. You want me to name them? All of those Māori who are in Parliament, you Māoris in Parliament, you're selling us out.
Yeah, big time.
Your people will curse you through the ages.
Yeah.
Tēnā koe. Can I say tēnā koe? Thank you both very much for talking to us today. I really, really appreciate it. It means a lot. Ngā mihi nui kia kōrua.
Tēnā koe hoa.
Ngā kōrua. As of course, Deirdre Nehua and Rose Raharuhi Spicer. After the break, we have more Waiwiri Toa talking political polls, policies, parties, and participation in local government. After this, e te iwi mātakitaki mai rā. Kia ora mai anō. We have an awesome political panel today, so let's introduce them. She is the Professor of Business at Auckland University of Technology, Ahorangi Ella Henry, tēnā koe. We also have the Senior Political Journalist at Te Māori News at Whakaata Māori, Māni Domop, tēnā koe. And joining us for the first time, a politics reporter at the spin-off Lyric Waiwiri-Smith, Lyric no mai. Tēnā koutou katoa o rangatira. Let's get into it. Okay, councils, local body elections, Māori wards, 25 wards gone, 17 Māori wards remain. Is this a win for the right?
I think it's a win for democracy. And that's the problem when you are a minority in a democracy. The tyranny of the majority always seems to win, but it looks like there are enough allies walking alongside us this time. And that's nearly half of the wards saved. So I'm heartened.
Really? Do you see it that way, mate?
Yeah, I think from the government's perspective, I think it was probably looking at a, no pun intended, a bit of a whitewash in terms of how many wards would remain. But I think when you crunch the numbers again, I mean, I think it's 444,000 in the prelims voted in favour, which is comparative to 257,000 who voted against Māori wards across Aotearoa. And I think that in itself is a clear indication of what potentially is to come in the general election around, you know, where people's loyalties lies, like you say, where allies are sitting with Māori, especially when voter turnout is so low, when voter turnout is particularly non-Māori. So I think that speaks to a lot.
Lyric, if voter turnout was higher, would we have seen a change, do you think?
It's hard to say because I was quite surprised by the results as well. I think, you know, agreeing with Māori, a whitewash is probably what the government would have expected. You know, I feel like they were probably hoping for a complete just blowout of all the Māori wards. So in a way, it's a win for the left. It's a win for the tauiwi who have showed up and showed their support. And I guess, you know, the low voter turnout, people who are deep into politics will vote. So it does give us an idea of a divide heading into next year.
Yeah, there's some interesting results. I mean, Snow Tāne and Kaipara, I mean, that would be a massive change. He's only just behind by 5 votes. Nandor Tenchos, you know, in Whakatane. Interesting results, Ahorangi.
No, I think they're actually the zeitgeist. You know, every now and again, when you get so inundated by a narrative perpetuated by a philosophical position, political position, but the reality out on the streets where we all live is actually a little bit different. There's a change, there's a mood change at the street level. We saw it last year with Toi Tū Te Tiriti. We saw it at the polls this year, and I think we're going to see it at the next general election.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the ACT candidates or ACT-supported candidates within local elections there was a very small number that actually got through, which I think is also indicative of like you say, the feeling within Aotearoa.
Let's talk the latest poll. So National below 30%, first time in a long time. Labour just ahead, 31.2%-ish. ACT pretty much the same. Pāti Māori still at 4.4, despite what's happened actually over the last month, which is interesting as well. So, you know, the left bloc could become a government under this poll. Surprised, Lyric? What's your make on it?
Not surprised when, I guess, picking up on the kind of mood in the streets. Perhaps maybe some of us live in echo chambers and would say different things. But I think, you know, if you were in the National Party, you'd be getting pretty worried about those numbers. Although, and it's really interesting where Te Pāti Māori's at as well, given the last month. So they've got some pretty staunch support there. But also the support for NZ First is something to keep an eye on because you never really know what could happen next year and who could have a change of heart.
You're absolutely right. NZ First up, Green Party up as well, with some senior personnel leaving. The interesting thing, and I think Lyric's right, if you're the Prime Minister, you'd be worried by this, wouldn't you?
I can't imagine why he would be surprised when you've alienated mums over school lunches, working mothers, teachers, nurses, doctors. I mean, the list is growing. Oh, teenagers who will be voting for the first time next year. I mean, at some point you have to say, I cannot live in isolation of the babble that's coming back, and people are grumpy.
And I think Labour's reaping off that as well because they still haven't announced any solid policy or, you know, was meant to be coming out before the end of the year. So their game plan currently is nothing and it's working.
That can't last though, can it?
I mean, you can always just wait and see how much your enemy trips over themselves and fails. And I think they've really subscribed to the idea that New Zealand voters have quite a short memory. So I think they don't want to push too hard on policy now when it's over a year out and probably hit that 6-month sweet spot when people are really thinking about it.
And I do want to talk some policy, but there's no way surely that National would roll a sitting Prime Minister. Is there, Ahorangi?
I mean, I think if it goes down much lower, if we're talking about mid-20s, then traditionally in the past, national leaders have not survived that kind of death throng. So who knows? Look, I mean, it's playing out in front of our very eyes. Nobody can prophesy what's going to happen next.
OK, I want to talk about the Māori Party. There's been some interesting developments that have gone on here. Māori, you think about, you know, Tāku Te Wheres, you think about Toi Tū Te Tiriti and the separation there, and then this reset. What have you made of Te Pāti Māori? Obviously Oriini as well, but what have you made of Te Pāti Māori's performance over the last month or 2 months?
Yeah, I think we need to probably give Deirdre her flowers. I think a lot of, her achievement, her winning that seat was a bit clouded by all of the other drama. So, she came into the House with all her people on Thursday and, and a wahine Māori within that space, stunning. And, annoying the speaker once again over Doina Haka.
No, not that.
No, not that.
No, not that.
And I think it was started by Wharikura Tauira in the public gallery. So, anyway, we'll see what comes out of there. I think, as we've seen over... every political party has implosions, has internal politics that they have to overcome. And at the moment, it's Te Pāti Māori's turn. And, there was the toitu distancing itself or just wanting to be politically unambiguous and making that kind of clear around, they say that they weren't cutting ties, but it came across that way at the time. And then, the ongoing kind of narrative that's been playing out. And then the reset last week after Deirdre's maiden speech, which was a big speech around kind of not really clear admissions or acknowledgements of some of the things that Eru Kapakingi had said about the party around their leadership and those sorts of things. But, not a clear admission, but not acknowledging that, which goes to show that there are things happening internally and that they want to be able to reset. And part of that reset needs to be part of making policy, making them look to be fit to govern on the left, because that is what Labour leader has overtly said. But yeah, Lyric was there also, so I'm sure you've got lots to say.
I mean, there were lots of whispers of what a reset could be. Debbie said they'd listen to the people, they'd work harder and work better, not specifically on certain things, but they will work harder is their message. I think the resounding advice they must have got from their members is just to focus on the politics and the policy, because that's what they're going to go hard on this week. And, it's been a chocker month for them. It'll be even worse, I think, if this candidate that they've gone hard on promoting on the basis that she is the only true Māori voice you will have, if she ends up in front of the Privileges Committee, that's,
Okay, let's talk policy then.
Can I just add, though, one other point about the party, and that is because I was part of Manaia Tuwhare in the 90s, a candidate for them at 3 of the elections, and experienced the complete implosion of that party. Now, this is nearly 30 years ago, but I feel that if this party, which has lasted for 20 years, Manaia Tuwhare only lasted 12, if this party does not work out how to truly be a kaupapa Māori, open, transparent, policy-driven party, that we will watch it implode like we did Manaia Tuwhare, and that broke my heart.
Okay, but there's still 4.4% of the polls. I mean, remember, years ago with Peter Sharples and Tony, they would have loved 4.4%. So, again, there's on-the-ground stuff happening here. Okay, we're running out of time for policy, but let's look at what we think the next policy should be from Labour, or the policy that binds the left, Māni. Are we talking about something like a wealth tax, something that can grab the headlines, given what we've seen with RSB and everything else that's gone on? Thoughts? What's the policy that's going to bind the left coalition here?
If the left cannot come up with a way of dealing with inequity, and wealth tax is one of the easiest ways of doing it, it's not palatable for middle New Zealand, but it's crucial for the growing in unequal groups. Okay,
do you think it's going to happen? Will that be it?
I think probably not a wealth tax, maybe a capital gains tax. I think that, the Greens are quite clear on where they stand on that. The Te Pāti Māori want their policy to reflect, wealth distribution. So if Labour goes their own way, they might just have to follow suit.
Okay, and we're going to do a bit more after this as well. So we'll come back, all right? We've got the group after this. Stay with us. We've got more from our panel. Kia ita tonu mai. Hoki mai anō, we have our political panel of experts here with us. We're going to get right back into it now with a bit of policy and actually legislation that has passed through the House. So, Regulatory Standards Bill, 98% of submitters opposed it, passed. MACA, Marine and Coastal Area Act, National Party institutions, people who've been in the party didn't like it, passed. What does that say, Ahorangi?
This is a government that is using legislation to bully Māori.
That's an interesting thing to say. Do you think that's going to curry favour with voters next year? Are they appealing to the
There will
base?
be a population that does curry favour to that, but I think there's a growing number that don't. And these local elections have pointed to those changing numbers.
And I think, with the hīkoi last year and, getting people mobilised and people who've never, ever had to partake in a select committee or anything like that have so many of our people have mobilised in that sense. But now, in terms of these results, RSB, more than late 90s are against, voted opposing the bill, but yet it's still probably going to go through. So that's just going to create, and it is creating, like you say, this massive disdain of we're not being listened to if we're going to try and partake in a democracy. So what's the point?
Laura?
Yeah, well, the curse of the Select Committee is it's still a government committee, so they're not really going to call time on their own bill, So it has taught us how to mobilise and how to write in submissions, so that's a blessing that people have been more involved in democracy. But I think...
It doesn't seem to work though, right?
No.
They're not listening to our submissions.
I think we need to do an online episode because I had 10 other questions I wanted to ask the panel, so we'll do that after this. Tune in, we'll try and get an online episode at some stage. Ko rangatira tēnā koutou katoa. Ahorangi māni Dunlop and of course Laura Waiwiri-Smith. Hinui kia koutou katoa. We now move to a special part of the program today. Renowned Māori poet Hone Tuwhare not only walked on the march in 1975, he wrote poems about it. We leave you at the end of the show now with an extract from his poem about Whina Cooper named Rainmaker's Song for Whina. It is read by Hone Tuwhare's mokopuna Manaia Tuwhare-Hoani. We'll have more next week on The Hui. Until then, kia mau, ki te tūranga o te puta pua Aotearoa. Home e, hui e, tae ki e.
We hit the road leaving Te Hapua behind, and all the way south to the head of the fish, I picked up some hard truths embedded in your hilarious speeches on the marae. No more lollies. We've been sucking the Pākehā lolly for 150 years. Look at what's happened. Look at what we got left. Only 2 million acres. Yes, that's right, 2 million acres out of 66 million acres. Think of that. Good gracious, if we let them take what is left, we will all become taurekareka. Do we want that? So you listen now. This is a sacred march. We are marching because we want to hold on to what is left. You must understand this, and you must think of your tupuna. They are marching beside you. Move over and make room. We are not going to Wellington for nothing. And don't be mistaken. Kare tēnei hīkoi ōku, he hīkoi noa, aha rānei, ki te mirimiri i ngā pauro o te rōringi. E kui, what a way to bring the house down. You could not have lobbed a sweeter grenade. I'm all eared into you, baby. Kia ora tonu koe.
Nā te puna whakatongarewa, te hui, i tautoko.